Hi, welcome back to Purple Honey Farms. My name is Sandy and I am the owner and operator, and I also live here. And we don't just do flowers. We are a full homestead, and that includes making some of our own treats every single day. One of the things that I especially enjoy and my family enjoys is homemade breads. So today I'm going to make just an artisan white crunchy bread. It is super simple. It is nowhere near as complicated as making a sourdough starter or anything like that, and it's ready in 24 hours or less. So let's go ahead and get started. You are going to need a few things, but for today's part of it, you're going to need a large bowl. This just happens to be a mixing bowl as well. You're going to need a measuring cup, and you're going to need something a teaspoon and less. You're going to need salt, just plain old table salt. You're going to need some instant yeast for baking. You're going to need all-purpose flour, water, and saran wrap. And that's all that you're going to need for today. And these 4 ingredients and plus water are all the ingredients that you need whatsoever. Now, for tomorrow's section of it, you are going to need a Dutch oven or something with a lid. I use a stone Dutch oven and it works perfectly. But for today, this is all you're gonna need right here. So let's get started. Like I said, this is gonna be a crunchy, white, almost like a loaf. Well, it is gonna be a loaf, but it's gonna be very aerated, almost like a sourdough. It's gonna smell like sourdough. It's wonderful. So let's go ahead and get started. You don't have to do anything fancy with this. This is literally one of the easiest recipes that I make, and we love it. We eat way too much of this at our house. So you don't have to sift it or anything. So you are going to use 3 cups. I think this one just has 2. 2. We'll be a little heavy on that one. We were a little shy on the other one. So 2 cups of all-purpose flour, and then you need 1 teaspoon of salt. So, teaspoon of salt. And a 1/2 teaspoon of yeast. Scissors, that's what I'm looking for. So we'll put this on a 1/2 teaspoon of yeast. Go ahead and dump that right in. And then I typically just put this in like a little baggie and use it next week or whenever I'm going to do it again, because this yeast lasts forever and it's super cheap. So there's no this is not an expensive fancy bread. You're not gonna need, your kitchen stand or anything of that. Just this, literally just this. So next what you're gonna need is 1.5 cups of warm water. So I'll be right back. Okay, so this is warm water. You're gonna want warm water just to activate the yeast. If you get cold water, it'll still probably work, but your yeast is gonna be like super slow and you're gonna need a whole lot longer for it to happen. So this is ugly because it has the flour in it from a minute ago, but 1.5 cups of warm water. You don't want it like boiling hot because then you'll kill your yeast, but if you just use warm water, it'll activate it nicely. And then I use a fork to kind of stir mine up, just because it gets a little sticky. and you want a nice consistency, and I'll show that to you here in a minute. And with bread, if you ever made bread before, there's no real like exact amounts to anything with bread, and it doesn't matter how many times you make it, it's always going to be just a little bit different each and every time. So I like to use the fork just because it doesn't seem to clump up as bad with a fork, but if you want to use a spoon, that's up to you. If you want to use your hands, that's up to you too. I like a fork. Blend it really nicely, and when you pull your spoon or fork or whatever you're using up, it still should be quite sticky, but you don't want it so sticky that like the whole thing comes up with it. Okay, so this is a great consistency for me. I really like this consistency. It's not runny at all, but it's still workable. So we hit that one right on the money the first try. Go us. All right, so today's part is pretty much done. Like I said, this is like the super easiest bread you've ever seen in your life. Okay, so the final step for today is gonna be saran wrap, cling wrap, whatever you wanna call it. My husband calls it that sticky stuff that I don't like. So just whatever you prefer. And I don't want to get it like super tight, but at the same time, I want it to stay nice and firm on there. You can also do a tea towel or whatever you want, just something to cover this to make sure that nothing gets in it, nothing gross or anything, because you want it nice and clean, because this is your bread. This is what you're going to be eating. So I prefer cling wrap, that way I can still see it and know that it's activating, know that it's doing everything that it's supposed to do. So what we're gonna do is we're just gonna leave this on the counter here all night, overnight. I suggest that you let it set up for anywhere from 8 to 12 hours. You can do up to 24 hours. I've done that many times. So it is pretty late tonight, so we will have this for dinner tomorrow. So I will probably do this around lunchtime tomorrow. So that should give it a nice 12 hours or maybe a little bit longer to set up. And so I'll see you guys tomorrow. Okay, so it is the next day and my mixture has been sitting for, I don't know, probably 16, 18 hours now. So what I'm going to do is just take this off, and you can tell that the yeast worked because it is a little bit higher than it was, and it is super bubbly. I can't like tip it over too far or it would fall out. So what I'm going to do, is use my fork and just kind of give it a good stir in, just to make sure that there's no liquid sitting around anywhere and trapped in a pocket, which it shouldn't be, but we just want to double check. And now it's going to be really clumpy and sticky, which is awesome. So before I stick that on there, first things first, always sprinkle a little bit of flour and on your hands. Bread, especially homemade bread, is very tricky and it will stick to literally everything. So make sure that you got that good and sticky. Sorry, my dog just freaked out. All right, so I'm gonna go ahead and take that off the fork and put it on this one. Just kind of dump it out. And your hands are gonna get a little gross. That's the best part about cooking homemade, right? And I like to get every little bit. So this is not going to take much at all. This is a no-knead bread. So you just kind of, I like to just kind of roll it around in the undone flour just to get some of that uncooked flour, unleavened flour on there. And that's gonna be what your crunch is, your crunchy top. So, like I said, there's no kneading in this. And the more of this you get on there, the easier it'll be to handle as well. All right, so now that we've kind of rolled that around in there, what I'm going to do is get my pan. Okay, so the recommended is for a Dutch oven or some type of pan with a lid, like a Dutch oven. However, I don't own one. But what I do have is this bean pot from Pampered Chef, and it has a stone bottom in it, so it's gonna work just the same as a Dutch oven. So be smart, sprinkle a little bit of flour in the bottom of that. If you have clumps in your flour, go ahead and pat that out. Make sure that the whole bottom is kind of halfway covered, and then you can just dump it back out on this. Get any that you have left and put it on your hands. Okay, so like I said, this is not going to form into a ball. It's really, really gooey. So you just gather it up kind of as best you can and try to form it into halfway of a ball. Like I said, it is a mess. It really is. Try to stick it in the center. Do not pull this out or try to make it stretch across the bottom. It won't set up the right way, just trust me. So just try to pick it up in the best clump that you can. And if you have some really floury spots, that's okay too. Okay, so this is what it's going to look like when you get it into your pan. Like I said, there's plenty of flour on the bottom so that it doesn't stick to it. And you, like I said, you're gonna put this in the oven for 30 minutes at 450 degrees and make sure that you put your lid on it. Okay, now we're cooking. See you in 30 minutes. Okay, so it's been 30 minutes. So what I'm gonna do is just take this lid off okay, I'm gonna take the lid off. I'm gonna turn it just to make sure that it's nice and even, and we're gonna cook that for another 15 to 20 minutes. Here is our beautiful bread. Okay, so this is what it's going to look like when it comes out of the oven. You're gonna let it cool completely, okay? Let it cool completely, because if you try to get this out of here right now, it is not gonna work, okay? You're gonna scratch up the inside of your pot, you're gonna break a utensil, you're gonna do something. So just let this cool completely, and then we will look at it here in a little bit. Okay, so this has cooled all the way down. So all we're gonna do now is just literally pick it up out of here. And it's not really tall like sourdough, but that's okay. I have made them and they have been right puffy and tall. This one just didn't get so tall. Okay. It's still really good, I bet. So just plop it on the counter, and this is an actual bread cutter. So, and you can hear it, it's nice and crispy. And it's got a nice thickness to it, and it's delicious.